It was a chilly Friday evening in October 2018 when four friends, Lena, Tara, Brooke, and Haley, decided to meet up at a small diner just outside their quiet hometown of Ashgrove, Missouri. They hadn't all been together in months. Work, relationships, and life had pulled them in different directions, but that night they promised to make up for lost time. This is one of the darkest disappearances you'll ever hear, and the shocking truth that was buried right beneath the feet of four women. But before we begin, make sure you subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and leave a like and comment to support the channel. It helps us keep uncovering stories like this, stories that remind us some mysteries should have stayed buried. The diner, Marty's Place, sat along a two-lane highway surrounded by fields and the remains of an old sawmill. The neon sign buzzed faintly, flickering over the gravel lot. Inside, the smell of coffee and fried onions filled the air. Lena, the most outgoing of the four, slid into the booth first. "You know, it feels weird being here again," she said, glancing around the place they'd frequented in high school. Haley laughed softly. "It hasn't changed a bit. Still smells like burnt toast." Tara, quieter and more thoughtful, stirred her coffee. "Feels like a time capsule," she murmured. "Like the whole town's frozen." Brooke, the practical one of the group, checked her phone, as always. "No signal again," she muttered. "Figures. Ashgrove never caught up with the rest of the world." That night, they talked for hours, about their jobs, breakups, and how all of them wanted to leave Ashgrove someday. They didn't realize it would be the last time anyone saw them alive. When the waitress brought the check, it was nearly midnight. Outside, the road was dark and empty. A storm had rolled in, rain slicing through the glow of the diner lights. Security footage later showed the four women laughing as they ran toward Lena's silver Toyota Corolla. The car pulled onto County Road 19, a stretch known for its sharp bends and patchy cell coverage. They never made it home. By morning, none of them had contacted their families. Calls went unanswered. Texts were left on delivered. At first, no one panicked. They were adults, after all. Maybe they'd stayed over somewhere or gone out of town spontaneously. But when Sunday came and their cars, workplaces, and apartments remained untouched, the alarm bells rang. The Ashgrove Police Department, a small force with only 6 officers, launched a search. Deputy Mark Heller, the lead investigator, recalled the early days vividly. "We thought it was just a simple missing persons case," he later said in an interview. But by day 3, it was clear something wasn't right. Search teams scoured the backroads and forests. Drones were flown over the nearby Tanner Creek area, where cars had occasionally gone off the road before. Nothing. No tire marks. No wreckage. No signs of struggle. Locals speculated endlessly. Some said they'd seen the Corolla at a gas station around 1 a.m., though footage never surfaced. Others claimed the women had driven toward Bellhaven, a nearby ghost town being redeveloped into a housing estate. That rumor caught everyone's attention, because Bellhaven was no ordinary place. Bellhaven had been abandoned since the late 1970s after a factory explosion contaminated the soil. It was fenced off for decades, but by 2018, a developer had bought the land for a modern suburban project. The construction hadn't begun yet, and at night, the roads there were pitch black and unpatrolled. Deputy Heller sent a unit to check the area 2 days into the search. The officers found nothing, only broken signs, half-collapsed houses, and wind howling through hollow streets. But something about Bellhaven didn't sit right with him. Back at the police station, he studied the route data from Lena's phone. The last GPS ping came from a cell tower less than a mile from Bellhaven's perimeter. Then, nothing. Heller leaned back in his chair. "They didn't just disappear," he muttered to himself. They were swallowed. He didn't know then how close he was to the truth, or how deeply the town's forgotten past was connected to what happened that night. Days turned into weeks, and Ashgrove began to change. Flyers with the four women's faces were pinned to lampposts, taped to shop windows, and posted online. Candlelight vigils were held outside Marty's place, the diner that had unknowingly hosted their final meal. The case was gaining attention. News outlets called it the Ashgrove Four Mystery. True crime forums picked it apart. Theories spread like wildfire. A serial abductor targeting women. An accident covered up by local authorities. Even something paranormal tied to the toxic grounds of Bellhaven. But for Deputy Mark Heller, nothing added up. There was no evidence, no vehicle, no witnesses, no clues. Just silence. 4 months later, winter hit hard. Snow blanketed the town, and Bellhaven's ruins sat untouched, except for one small construction crew. The developer had begun early soil tests before their spring housing project. On January 9th, one of the site workers, Eli Ward, was operating a ground compactor when his equipment jolted to a stop. Beneath the surface, something metallic had jammed the blades. He called for his supervisor. When they started digging, they uncovered the roof of a vehicle buried under 3 feet of compacted dirt. Police arrived within the hour. It was upside down, crushed in places, Heller recalled. Like it had been swallowed by the earth. The vehicle was confirmed as Lena's Toyota Corolla, the same one seen leaving the diner. But the discovery only deepened the mystery. The car's keys were still in the ignition, headlights off. Inside, the seats were empty. All 4 women were gone. Forensics indicated the car hadn't been buried intentionally. The soil collapse suggested a sinkhole or unstable ground. But Bellhaven's records showed no geological instability in that area. Heller requested an extended excavation. As the crew dug wider, they found remnants of old sewer tunnels that didn't appear on any of the town's modern blueprints, possibly dating back before Bellhaven's factory era. Inside one of those tunnels, they found something chilling, a red leather purse with Haley's initials. Her driver's license was still inside, along with a cracked phone that had never been recovered before. When digital forensics tried to extract data, they found one undelivered voice message timestamped at 12:43 a.m., the night the women vanished. It was garbled, but part of it was clear enough to make the technicians stop cold. Wait, something's wrong. Tara says she saw, not supposed to be here, someone's. Then silence. Authorities cordoned off the Bellhaven site for a full-scale dig. Heller descended into the exposed tunnels with a flashlight, leading a team of forensic experts and officers. The deeper they went, the more the air changed, damp, heavy, laced with the smell of rust and something else, something stale. At the end of one corridor, they found a rusted metal door. Heller pried it open and stepped into what appeared to be a makeshift underground chamber. There were signs of old habitation, camping gear, tools, even faded food wrappers, none of it recent, but disturbingly familiar. On one wall, someone had scrawled a phrase in faded black paint. "She won't let them leave." The forensics team confirmed that the underground area had likely been used decades ago during Bellhaven's industrial period, but there were traces of recent activity too: boot prints, newer plastic bottles, and a burned-out lantern battery dated from only a year earlier. That discovery raised even more disturbing possibilities. Someone had been down there long after the factory's closure. And if someone had been living there, they might have known exactly what happened to the 4 women. Over the following weeks, new details emerged. Locals came forward with strange stories: missing pets, unexplained noises, and lights seen near Bellhaven at night long after its supposed abandonment. One elderly resident, Irene Mallory, told investigators something no one expected. Her late husband had worked as a foreman at the Bellhaven plant before it exploded in the 70s. According to him, certain underground tunnels weren't sealed off like the company claimed. They led to storage areas built into the hillside. And more disturbing still, some of those tunnels connected to a private shelter once owned by the factory's founder, Richard Carver. When police looked into Carver's estate records, they found something eerie. A sealed deed transferring ownership of that land to a woman named May Carver, his daughter, who had vanished herself in 1981. Heller began to suspect that Bellhaven wasn't abandoned because of the factory accident alone. There were secrets buried there that someone wanted forgotten. And as they continued to excavate the tunnels, they began to realize the 4 missing women might have uncovered something they were never supposed to find. By the time spring of 2019 rolled around, the Bellhaven site had become a restricted zone. Excavation crews, forensic teams, and journalists camped outside the security fences daily. Ashgrove wasn't used to attention, and the locals didn't like it. Deputy Mark Heller hadn't slept properly in weeks. Every night, the image of that rusted door haunted him, the words, "I won't let them leave," echoing in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone had been living beneath Bellhaven long after it was officially abandoned. Then, one evening, he received a call that changed everything. A woman named Carmen Dorsey, who worked as a property researcher for the county, said she had found something odd in the archives. Back in 1982, there had been reports of a missing survey crew, 2 men, who vanished while checking soil levels near the Bellhaven plant. Their equipment was later found near an unmarked entrance to the same tunnel system where the Corolla had been buried. The incident was quietly dropped from public records. No media coverage, no follow-up. Carmen faxed Heller a scan of the original field note from one of the surveyors. The last line read, "Heard a woman's voice in the tunnels, calling our names." That clue led Heller and his team to re-examine Bellhaven's perimeters. About half a mile from the main dig site, they discovered a collapsed retaining wall partially covered by vines and debris. Behind it, a narrow concrete shaft descended into the earth, large enough for a person to crawl through. It wasn't on any of the blueprints. The first officer to go down reported finding old lanterns, glass bottles, and a chain of electrical wires leading deeper underground. When Heller followed, his flashlight illuminated a strange sight. A corridor lined with rusted pipes and faded warning signs from the 1970s. But at the far end was something more recent, a wooden chair, a camping stove, and what looked like a bedroll made from discarded blankets. And next to it, a small altar. On it sat 4 wilted bouquets of flowers, a cracked mirror, and a Polaroid photo of 4 young women, Lena, Tara, Brooke, and Haley, taken at Marty's place the night they disappeared. That discovery brought the FBI into the case. They took over the tunnels, sealing the area and collecting everything as evidence. Among the items found in a rusted locker nearby was an old cassette recorder, its magnetic tape still intact. When the audio was cleaned up, parts of a recording played through the static. Sound of dripping water. They came again. 4 of them this time. They shouldn't have entered. She doesn't like guests. Pause. I told them to leave before nightfall. But they laughed. Now she's angry. Long silence. I can still hear them. The handwriting on the tape label matched May Carver's, the factory owner's daughter who vanished decades earlier. Through old psychiatric records, investigators pieced together a disturbing backstory. May had suffered from severe mental illness after the factory explosion that killed her father. In 1978, she was briefly institutionalized but later released under supervision to live on her family's estate, near Bellhaven. But after 1981, all traces of her vanished. The property deed she inherited was never transferred again. And now, it appeared May have lived, or survived, underground for years, hidden in the sealed tunnels her father once used as a fallout shelter. When forensic teams analyzed the underground chamber where the women's car was buried, they found fingerprints on one of the rusted door handles, degraded, but consistent with May Carver's 1978 medical file. That was impossible, unless May had somehow survived down there for decades. A month later, workers uncovered another chamber, larger than the rest. Inside were old hospital cots, decayed medical supplies, and evidence of long-term habitation. But what stopped everyone cold was what they found against the far wall: 4 shallow graves, marked only by stones. Each grave contained human remains wrapped in deteriorated cloth. DNA confirmed they belonged to Lena, Tara, Brooke, and Haley. It was the discovery Ashgrove had been waiting for and dreading. Autopsy reports revealed that the women hadn't died instantly. They had suffered from oxygen deprivation, trapped underground after a structural collapse, likely within minutes or hours after their car was swallowed by the unstable soil. But there was one detail that investigators couldn't explain. 3 of the bodies showed signs of post-mortem repositioning, as though someone had moved them after death. And beside the final grave, the one presumed to be Haley's, was a rusted hairbrush, with long gray strands tangled in it. Deputy Heller sat in his car outside the dig site the night they finished exhumations. The weight of it all pressed on him, the unanswered questions, the strange recordings, the haunting evidence that someone, or something, had been tending those graves. He stared at the silent fields beyond the fence line, whispering to himself, "May Carver's been dead for decades, hasn't she?" The discovery of the 4 women's graves brought a somber closure to Ashgrove, but not peace. The public assumed the case was solved, a tragic accident caused by unstable ground. But Deputy Mark Heller couldn't rest. Too many details refused to fit neatly into the official explanation. The recorder, the handwriting, the signs of someone tending the graves. If May Carver had died decades ago, then who had been living down there all those years? 2 weeks after the bodies were exhumed, Heller returned to Bellhaven alone. It was well past midnight. The site was fenced off and dark. The construction project had been permanently halted after the discovery. He parked his cruiser at the edge of the field, the headlights cutting through mist that rolled like smoke across the empty lot. He'd told himself he just wanted one last look, to make peace with it. But in truth, he wanted answers. Heller crawled through the temporary access shaft the crews had left behind. The air was damp, heavy with rot and mildew. His flashlight beam sliced through layers of dust that had settled since the dig ended. Deeper inside, he reached the chamber where the women had been found. The graves were empty now. The forensics team had cleared everything, yet someone had placed 4 new flowers there. Fresh. Still wet from dew. That stopped him cold. He whispered, "Who's still coming down here?" Then it came, faint, distant, echoing through the tunnels. A low humming, like a woman singing to herself. Heller drew his gun and followed the sound. The tunnel curved left, then sloped downward toward a passage he hadn't seen before, one that had been sealed by debris during the excavation. The humming grew louder as he descended. Finally, he reached a door, an iron hatch covered in decades of rust. He pushed, and it groaned open. Inside was a small room lined with shelves. Jars, canned food, a lantern, a rusted cot. And on the wall, hundreds of photographs. Newspaper clippings, Polaroids, even sketches. Every one of them showed the same faces: Lena, Tara, Brooke, Haley. Pinned beneath those photos was a single page from an old newspaper, dated 1981. The headline read, "Local woman May Carver declared missing, family estate to be seized." A notebook sat on the cot. Heller opened it carefully. The handwriting was shaky but unmistakably feminine. They come here because they don't listen. They laugh. They wander. I try to warn them, but she gets angry. She hates the noise. I stay because it's safer here. Safer below. The ground takes what it wants. The last 4, they stayed too long. I made it quick. I buried them nice. She's calm now. On the final page, a line written in a different hand, newer, firmer. I can still hear them. Forensics later confirmed what Heller already suspected. The notebook's ink and paper were modern. Someone had written those words within the last 5 years. DNA recovered from the pages matched traces found on May Carver's old belongings, but it also matched unknown female DNA retrieved from a hairbrush at the gravesite. The state coroner concluded that May have survived well into her 60s, living undetected in the tunnels, or that someone related to her had continued her delusion, possibly believing they were May herself. The public report listed the cause of the 4 women's deaths as accidental suffocation due to soil collapse. The investigation was closed. But among law enforcement, the unofficial story was darker. A woman, perhaps May, perhaps her descendant, had lured them underground, trapping them when the structure gave way. And afterward, she stayed, watching over the graves, singing softly in the dark. Bellhaven was permanently sealed. The housing project was cancelled, the land purchased by the state, fenced off, and marked environmental hazard zone, no entry. Heller retired a year later. He left Ashgrove for good, but the memories followed him, especially the humming. Sometimes, late at night, he'd wake to the sound of wind whistling through old vents. And for a second, he'd swear he heard that same faint voice, the one that still haunted the tunnels beneath Bellhaven. She won't let them leave. In 2022, construction crews working several miles north of Bellhaven unearthed another sealed shaft while clearing land for a new highway. At the base of the shaft was an empty cot and a single Polaroid photograph. 4 young women, sitting in a diner booth, smiling. On the back, written in neat handwriting, "They came again."